Hi, Lisa. I sent you the request. Can you see it? Can you accept the request? Okay, perfect.
Can you see me okay?
Yay, it
Okay.
worked. Oh my God. Like I was about to say we should not have ended the first testing because if something works, just don't interrupt it. Okay, great. Technology didn't fail us, which is a relief. I see hearts already. People are admiring our women leadership. That was like a true example.
Tenacity is a very important skill set, and that's what we just displayed for you.
Yeah, tenacity, resilience, and perseverance. And we made it to live broadcast. Okay, guys, so I will introduce myself and then I will introduce my guest, Lisa. Thank you for everyone who joined us today. This will be a very exciting and very interesting conversation. I am excited myself because I don't know where it's going to lead us and what discoveries we will make today together with you and with Lisa. My name is Tatiana Indina. I am a doctor of psychology. I'm an innovative leadership coach. I'm a team and leadership coach and performance and productivity coach for executive leaders. I'm an author of CEO 2.0 in a book about innovative leadership and 2 days book about how to change your life in 2 days. For many years, I worked with entrepreneurs and leaders in Silicon Valley, with many innovators, where I founded 2 of my companies, Indina-Consulting and Mission to Mars Academy, that help global leaders get future ready. So that was my introduction. And now let me introduce you our very special guest today, Lisa Subrize, who is a female leader in healthcare and business for over 70 years. She is now an owner of Leading with Lisa, a professional development business coaching and consulting firm, where she helps conscious individuals and businesses grow and scale. Welcome, Lisa. It is an honor to have you today.
Thank you, Tatiana. It's wonderful to be here with you.
Amazing. And today, as promised, we will have a very interesting conversation about female or women leadership. And we will start this conversation from asking Lisa, who is a woman leader in America who made a successful career in healthcare, in corporate world, to ask her about her journey. What was your path that led you to this point, to founding your consulting firm that is not about healthcare, but about conscious personal development? Mindfulness. So if you could just tell us a little bit about your journey and where you are today.
Yes, thank you so much. I so appreciate the opportunity to be here with you and to tell a little bit about my story and what's brought me to the point today that I'm at today in my career and in my just personal journey. So I'm the youngest of 5 kids. I come from a really big family. I was, raised in Florida here in the United States. And I know we have audience members from all over the world listening in today. I come from a very big family. And so when I set out upon my personal journey, there were some things that I did in my career and for my life that really, I think, made a difference for me. First and foremost, I did go to college at a very small school in Florida. But that school really opened me up to the world of just international travel, internationalism. I, lived in 3 countries in Europe and studied abroad when I was an undergrad, and it really exposed me to other cultures. And I think that served me well in my career. It really introduced a lot of diversity in my life that maybe I didn't have growing up in the area that I was in Florida. I have also followed my career. I started it off working at the Treasury Department, which, I thought was going to be a predominantly, very highly mathematical, highly,
You worked in Washington, D.C. at that time. You understand, right? So Washington, D.C.
Correct.
And today you are in Washington, D.C.
I am in Washington, D.C., and I started my career in Washington, D.C. So
yeah, it is important to frame this environment, so because it is also significant, right? So Washington, D.C. is a very special place.
Washington, D.C. is the capital of the United States. It's also the political epicenter of government in the United States. So, sort of a power political center hub here in the US. And I started off my career working at the Department of Treasury. I, worked in the government and politics on Capitol Hill for quite a few years right after that. And then I decided to transition into healthcare because I always wanted to be a CEO. And that led me on the journey of a lifetime, just traveling around the country, working at different types of companies. I've worked in small companies, big companies, Fortune 500 companies. I've worked in startup environments. I've worked in private equity backed companies. And so I've seen a lot of different similarities in different environments. I've also moved all across the country and lived in different places around the United States. And so that's allowed me to understand different cultures, different dynamics. And every place that I've lived has really led to so much of what I understand about business today, working in different environments in different areas of the country. So I've lived in Arizona. I've relocated to Hartford, Connecticut. I lived in Virginia, in their capital of Richmond. And now I'm back in Washington, D.C., where I've decided to launch Leading with Lisa, which is, my latest venture.
Wow, that is a very diverse and very rich experience. And I'm sure our audience can learn a ton from you. But speaking of women leadership, what was your experience like being a woman in all these environments, in politics and business, in Fortune 500 companies? What was your personal feeling of being a woman leader in all those places? So if you want to share more about that.
I would just say you learn a lot of really tough lessons, being reared in corporate America. I think, I was very fortunate to because I come from such a big family. I had a huge support system. But I can tell you that so many of my family members have never really gone this route, and wanting to be entrepreneurial or wanting to sort of climb the corporate ladder in that way. And so whereas I had a really strong support system of friends and family, I realized very early on the importance of identifying what I call your tribe. So that is, those people in your life who can be your mentors, your coaches, people who've seen it before, who've done it before, and who can help guide you along the way. It's so important if you are somebody who is highly ambitious, who is wanting to, accelerate in your career, that you have someone in your corner that can help you get there, anticipate some of the risks that you might be facing, that can help you, give you feedback when you need feedback, and that can help you to, to be able to make sense of some of the lessons that you're learning along the way, because corporate America will teach you a lot of lessons, just as entrepreneurship will teach you a lot of lessons.
Yeah, that's true. And those would not be the easiest lessons. Speaking from my experience, also having background in all these areas in politics, business, and entrepreneurship, this is like very tough schools of life, but grateful for the learnings. Let's define the concept of women leadership. What do you think is, if there is such a separate phenomenon as women leadership? I often felt kind of doubted about, do we really need all these women conferences? It's like we are kind of discriminating women additionally by putting them in a separate category. Is it needed? And what is special about women leaders and women leadership? Why do we need to talk about it as a separate phenomenon? What would be your take?
Yeah, I think it's important for women to have exposure to co-ed types of learning, but being able to be around other women where we can talk about the things that really are unique to us. I'll tell you about my own personal journey. Because I was so, fiercely different from, so many of my family members, and decided to go out on this really independent, voyage and journey in my lifetime. A lot of times what will happen, and it's actually very common among women executive leaders, to really pursue your career with this fierce ambitiousness, and you develop a lot of competency at at navigating in a male dominated world, or in a very sort of with a male energy, I think is probably how I would characterize it, right? So all of the, you know, sort of male characteristics. And what we find so often is that those things that make you highly successful in your professional life can actually become impediments in your personal life. And so you have a lot of female leaders that, you know, are so driven and they're super ambitious and they're successful in their professional lives. And then you get to their personal lives and they're, you know, struggling to find the kind of love that will be able to support and nurture them in their ambitions. And how do you balance being a wife, being a mother, being a partner, and still being a business professional, and all of the dynamics at play? And so I just, you know, I feel like what women need is to be able to have safe spaces around other women where we can talk about all of the skills that we need to build, all of those hard skills that we need to build to be able to survive in corporate America, or as an entrepreneur, or as a business woman, and also to be able to take those masks off and to really talk about how hard that is and how challenging that is, and to really be able to be around other women that get it and that are in, you know, they may be somewhere ahead of you, they may be behind you. So if they're not quite where you are yet, they have something to learn from you and you have something to give them. So being able to approach leadership, I believe, from a place of authenticity is so important. And other women need to see that. They need to be able to experience that in a way that feels authentic and natural and safe to them. That's why I think it is so important for women to be able to gather, to be able to go to conferences that are directed to other women and to other women professionals or other ambitious women, whether it's, you know, wanting to start a nonprofit, wanting to, you know, climb the corporate ladder if you are more inclined in business, if you're looking to really carve your mark in government. And, you know, government can also be, you know, there can be a lot of challenges there. So being able to be around other women who are like you, who've done it before, or who are doing it now and experiencing what you're experiencing, I think is so important. It's important for us to be able to overcome imposter syndrome. It's important for us to be able to talk about what really is going on, the challenges we face, and the skills that we can learn in the process to be able to overcome them, not just for ourselves, but for other women in the community.
Wow, so true. For myself, I took note that women leadership must exist as a separate thing because, first of all, women and men, we are different biologically, not just physiologically, but also by the roles that we play in society. And also there are specific features, a style of women leadership and specific challenges that women have to deal with at their workplace as opposed to men. And being an entrepreneur who has to operate in a masculine, man-dominated environment where you pitch men investors, you present to men corporate leaders, you manage men who are your employees, and it has specifics, right? So definitely, and I 100% support that women need their tribe, they need their women circles to have the sisterhood, to share wisdom, experience, and to support each other, because our journey is not the easiest one. You're exactly right saying that it's a pressure of being a perfect wife and a perfect partner, and also keep up with like high standards at work. Okay, so now I want to ask you, Lisa, what are your personal principles of leadership? You as a woman leader who is so successful in all your roles, what are some of the principles of leadership that you developed for yourself, that you follow, that you could share with other women today?
Sure. Yeah, it's a great question. And I think really assessing your values is so important as a woman. I think it is important whether you are an executive woman, whether you're starting a company and you're an entrepreneur, fempreneur, or whether you're a small business owner. I think really understanding your own values, because really what you're asking me is, what are the values that you hold near and dear to your heart that are going to be so critical, that have been so critical to my success? And what I would say is, I'll tell you what mine are. And I would just encourage everybody to really do that self-assessment of themselves to really determine what are their own personal values. And, you know, for so many reasons. In my case, I boiled it down to 4 key values. The first is lifelong learning. And I think that is so important because if you want to learn how to, quote, win the game, you have to understand where your strengths and weaknesses are. You have to develop self-awareness. You have to find your tribe. And if you're thinking about what do I need to know to be successful, then really what you've got to start with, like, what don't I know, right? First of all, I may not know what I need to be to be successful. This is where having a tribe of other people who you can go to that have done it before can help you figure that out. So learning, lifelong learning is so important for you to maintain your relevancy, for you to be able to accelerate your career. The more you learn, the more you realize how much you have to learn, but also the easier.
The more I know, the
figure
more
it out.
I don't understand that I don't know.
Exactly.
What's the Socrates circle or Descartes? I'm trying to remember what. The more you know, the more there is unknown.
Leaders are learners, absolutely. Yes.
They say, and the environment is changing at such a high pace, so you need to keep up. That's what we're always teaching our groups, and that's why this whole innovative leadership concept was developed, because you have to change, otherwise you will die like a dinosaur in this AI-dominated world these days. So,
oh my gosh, you've hit on such an important topic. I talk to so many business owners and so many entrepreneurs about AI. There are a lot of people out there that are afraid of ChatGPT. When you and I were growing up and we were early in our careers, there were people that didn't know how to type. They ultimately became dinosaurs. If you are a business person now and you have not tried ChatGPT, if you're not on social media and trying to figure out how you establish an online presence, now is the time to start. It's so important to gain these skills, because people who are coming up the ranks, they're learning this in high school. They're, I don't feel
different generation, and they are digital natives, and you have to compete with younger generation of leaders who are very tech savvy. And moreover, I would say that today it is getting, as a human leader, you're already competing with AI, with all the automation tools. And if you open LinkedIn today, it is impossible to break through the noise of all that automated communication generated by AI. And everybody is bombarding everybody with these AI generated messages that are highly personalized, but you understand this is a machine, not a real human. So what we're lacking in this, and speaking of leadership, what we are lacking in this technology dominated world, when robots are really already taking our jobs, is like being an excellent human leader, an excellent communicator, having all these human skills as authenticity, as empathy, ability to to spread the right message, right, and to connect. And this is what women are great at, and I think that is why female leadership, women are very articulate, they're great communicators, they're very empathic, they have high emotional intelligence level. So for that, I think this is the age of women leaders.
Using AI and figuring out how to incorporate that into what you do, whether that, I'm actually hearing people that are finding the most creative ways to use AI. They're using it in their dating life, they're using it in their business life, they're using it, in their family life, because sometimes it can be hard to figure out how to say things in the right way, how to write it in the right way, how to express your feelings in the right way. These tools are simply that. They're tools that can take what you're feeling, what you're thinking, what you're wanting to communicate, and help you do that in a way that is, in some cases, more effective, in some cases, more efficient. And so it's just a matter of it's just another tool in the toolbox. It's nothing to be afraid of. It's nothing to run away from. It's really a matter of figuring out how you can embrace it in a way that feels authentic to you, to be able to most authentically communicate your message. So, learning is absolutely number one. If there is
AI your friends, make AI your friends. And now back to leadership principles of Lisa. Principle number 2.
Number 2,
try to keep us on track.
Number 2 is integrity. So integrity for me is so important. It's knowing your personal values, who you are as a person, understanding your core motivations, your core desires, your core fears, really what drives you, understanding your personality, understanding your true essence, and how you can marry those in a way that makes the most sense. I think since we do have an international audience here, integrity also can be interpreted differently culture to culture to culture. Something that is, completely acceptable in one part of the world may not be acceptable in the United States, for example. Something that is common practice in one part of the United States may not be acceptable in another part of the United States. And so in my personal organization,
example of integrity, like what would be a very visual example? Yeah, or maybe absolutely. Some kind of a mistake that people can do in this principle.
Sure. So in some cultures, in some parts of the country, there are a lot of handshake deals. Things like you help me, I help you. But for example, if you're a business that's wanting to get into the government space, there are very clear laws around integrity and what constitutes a kickback. There are anti-kickback laws. There are antitrust laws.
No handshake deal in the government.
There are a lot of things that can get you into a lot of trouble. Yeah. From doing things that, might be acceptable in one part of the country or maybe in an international realm that are not okay in certain industries or in certain types of businesses in the United States. And going into it, if you're just a new business owner and you're not familiar with it, or maybe you're an executive that's making, or a business person that's making a career change, you may not be aware of what constitutes a kickback or what constitutes, antitrust violation. And, in the world of competition, there are specific do's and don'ts that the governments have laid out country to country to country. So it's important that as you start off, that you are working with partners that understand compliance, that can teach you regulations, that can help to protect you in the process and allow you to maintain your integrity. I'll also give you another example. Authenticity. Authenticity in the business world is so important. So being able to communicate your authentic truth can be very difficult in times of conflict, whether that is conflict with a business associate, with a producer, a supplier, with an internal employee if you're working in corporate America. And, I talk a lot about the importance of self-regulation because when a person is upset about something, whether they're feeling, they're triggered in some way, whether they're angry, they're betrayed, they are fearful, you can react in ways that are not truly authentic with your essence and who you are and your brand. And in those moments, it's really important to understand your values and have those values be your North Star so that you don't always give in to the emotional response that you have in that moment. Integrity is really about staying true to who you are, even in the face of adversity. And that's why a lot of what I do with business professionals, whether they're business owners, fempreneurs, whether they're corporate executives or C-level executives, is we talk a lot about communicating through conflict, effective communications, because if you can learn these tools and techniques, it will allow us to be able to self-regulate ourselves so that we're not masking what's upsetting us in those moments, but we're able to communicate it in a way that's effective for the other party to learn our boundaries, what's acceptable, what behaviors align with our sense of integrity.
And especially today, when we are seeing what's happening around the world, the wars that are emerging, the conflicts that are full of hatred and cultural labeling. And what I'm saying is that leaders must learn cross-cultural competency, cross-cultural communication skills to understand the values of other culture, because cultures are different, right? In some companies, you were mentioning specifics of governmental culture versus corporate, versus entrepreneurship culture, but also around the world, there are so many differences. In some countries, mixing your personal life and with your work life and bringing your emotions and stories about your life to your work is okay. You're demonstrating your family values. In other cultures, it is strictly professional according to the formal guidelines, and people do not like. There is a whole course about it, like how we are different, like Latin American cultures, Arabic cultures, American, European cultures. But what is happening around the world is a signal that leaders must be so aware. Everybody must ask themselves, what are my values as a leader? What am I standing for? What are my morals? What is appropriate? What is not? And keep each other accountable to the highest standard, because the consequences can be catastrophic. And we're seeing this, what's happening, what bad leadership can lead to: inability to have diplomatic conversation, inability to accept one's mistakes and to step back, inability to negotiate in a conflict situation, ability to compromise. And we are seeing so many examples of bad leadership around the world, especially in politics today. It is just, and by the way, I want to underline that none of these conflicts ever was started by a woman. Women are the peacemakers. They are not the warriors. They are creators of life. They are not destroyers of life. They are not clashing to win, or at no matter what cost. I think we had women leaders appointed at all these governments that are at wars right now, we would not have all these wars. Women never start wars. I don't know any woman in history that would start any war. This is just against our nature. So, man, think about it.
Well, I think you bring up a great point. Yeah. And I would say the third element or value is really around strength and what constitutes strength. You talk about strength in international politics, and the way that strength materializes. When I think of strength in terms of my own personal values, what I really mean is courageous leadership, boldness, and being courageous. And so the way that materializes is, being able to speak up and find your voice, because, we just talked about the importance of communicating and communicating effectively, communicating through conflict. When you're in corporate America, or when you're an entrepreneur, friendpreneur, small business owner, you are going to come across misunderstandings with people. You are going to be able to, there's going to be some point in time when you or your team or your company has let down the other party, and vice versa. How you navigate those scenarios is actually a big indicator of who you are and your level of maturity as an executive, as a leader, as a company, because failure points and missteps happen, and being able to navigate through those is so critical in business. So strength-based leadership, which I refer to as really courageous leadership, is so important. Finding your voice is so key to being able to be a courageous and bold leader. The other thing I'll say about this, and for me, it served me so well in my career. If you are in the room, if you are in the meeting, one, find a way to make your way to the table. Make sure that you have a seat at the table. And once, or on that conference call, on that, make sure that you are positioning yourself to be up front, to be seen, and to be heard.
And by the way, I want to insert this question that I had on my list for today, because it is right on this topic. Because many women are so self-critical. They're often holding themselves back, and they're very shy or not confident enough to make their voice heard, especially when I heard this speech of a professor from Princeton, that imposter syndrome is not like a subjective problem of an individual. It is an objective problem in society, because society creates certain barriers that it is definitely intimidating for women to overcome those barriers, because they really exist. This is not your subjective lack of confidence. This is objective reality that you're in an uphill journey. So what would be your tip? What would be your recommendation for women to overcome this imposter syndrome? Women who are raised in other cultural environments, women who are immigrants, and competition is like much harder, because they are starting from a much lower position already, and they are being labeled with the cultural stereotypes often, right? Different. Even intellectually, they're not seen as equal to men often. So what would be the recommendation for women to overcoming, to getting that seat at the table and to making their voice heard, even if they're not 100% confident about it?
It's such a great question.
Yeah.
My experience has been that no matter what level you are in your career, as a woman, you will always feel that way. You will always have a point in your career where you have felt that way. So my advice is, first of all, start with the lifelong learning, right? So if there's something that you feel you want to speak up about, but you're not sure that your opinion is going to matter, I would just do a little bit of research on that, whatever that topic is. If you're a reader, look online, look at the current events, do some research on that topic. If you're not as fast of a reader, or maybe you're not as comfortable, try audiobooks so that you can gain it that way. I can tell you another, secret that I've used over the years is find conferences on that topic. What you will learn is the key issues are related to that topic. You'll often learn the opposing viewpoints related to that topic. You find this in politics and government all the time.
Pick other people's brains,
yes,
basically, and do your homework.
Absolutely. And you will find out what people are curious about, what they don't know. And what you'll find is a lot of the questions that they ask may be questions that you're asking yourself. So, and there's a really fundamental point there, which is if you have a question and you're at that table and you've gotten that seat, you're at that table, do not be afraid to ask that question. One of the things I always talk about is there are no stupid questions. There are just questions that were never asked.
Well, people are afraid to ask because they don't want anybody to think they're stupid. But those are common sense questions that often, like nobody's addressing the elephant in the room, right?
Absolutely. So if you're at that table and you have that question, bold and courageous leadership means that you just have to force yourself to ask the question. And don't just ask it for yourself. Ask it for every other woman in that room that's afraid to ask it. So that's what I mean by bold and courageous leadership. It's find the table that you need to be at. Do the work, do the research, go to the conferences, understand the issues, and then figure out what questions you have. And when you're there, force yourself to ask the questions. That will help you to get over the, imposter syndrome and the performance anxiety that you may feel from having that spotlight on you. Start with a question. You don't necessarily have to give your opinion. You could give your opinion about why that question is so important to you, and ask the question for other people if you are afraid to ask it for yourself.
And you can always refer to experts that you watched on YouTube or read reports on the internet. So you can use drop some names if you want to add power to your statement, right? So that would be a good idea.
Absolutely. Okay. I think if anybody on here has not checked out Tatiana's work, please do. She is a tremendous researcher, has done some really great work, has really fantastic research and lessons and teachings on mindful leadership. Quote her work all day at these
Thank you. I invite everybody to check out my concept of innovative leadership. That is gender agnostic. It's designed for men and women, and it helps you succeed in a changing world, technology dominated world. Back to leadership principles. Do we have many? Because I think we can talk about it all day, but I have so many questions I wanted to bring up today. So if we could highlight other principles, like briefly, and then jump to other questions that are very practical questions, guys, that we will talk about you as a woman, how you network, how you pitch, how you present yourself, how you deal with the different, actually practical stuff. So, but let's wrap up the principles.
Sure. The final principle I would say is awareness. And that's awareness of self and awareness of others. And so, if you look at these values, they are lifelong learning, integrity, strength or courage-based leadership, and awareness of self and others. It's an acronym for LISA. So leading with LISA stands for leading with those values. And
okay, that is beautiful. That is very, very smart. Just a good branding tool. So if you could name those values once again, so we know the abbreviature.
Absolutely.
So what LISA stands for?
Sure. Lifelong learning, integrity, strength-based leadership, and awareness of self and others. awareness.
What a beautiful example of women leadership. No, your name, but you're also manifesting all these leadership values that we were talking about. I love it. I think this is genius.
Thank you for that. Yeah, it's these, when I boiled down my career, the things that I wanted to be able to convey to other people around values-based leadership, it just perfectly encapsulated it. So thank you for that.
Amazing. Okay, and now we are moving to our list of questions about women leadership. So we spoke a little bit about how women leadership is different, and now we will compare probably, right? Because you were mentioning being a woman leader in business in corporate America and being a woman leader in entrepreneurship world, which I also had both experiences, and also in government. So what are the specifics? What are the skill sets that are required for women to be successful in corporate America, in entrepreneurship, and in government? Let's define those skill sets. So those are like 3 boxes, right, that we have here. So, and I can add if you'd like.
Sure. Okay. So I would say self-awareness is probably first and foremost. It's so important to understand your strengths, your weaknesses, your motivations. Motivations, I define those as being your fears and your desires. Your fears are what you're running away from, just naturally what you're running away from. And that could be insecurity, that could be abandonment, that can be all kinds of things, but really understanding what those fears are that are driving you away from that. And then what are your desires, which is what your motivations are driving you toward. And really understanding those is so critical. So that just self-awareness is so important. As an entrepreneur, a fempreneur, small business owner, it is so critical to understand what your motivations are, because it will allow you to assess when you're looking at an opportunity, is that opportunity aligned with where you want to go? It'll also allow you to kind of sift through the emotional, reactions to an opportunity or the fear that you may have. It may be something that you can say, you know what, this is actually something that I am afraid of because of this reason. It's a core motivator for me, but it's something I need to learn and I'm going to do it anyway. So you can
self-awareness. I want to agree and emphasize this, because when you are a leader, it means you have a higher ranking, higher status, and many people are kind of below your level. So you would not get an honest feedback from your employees, for example, or your partners, because they will be afraid to spoil the relationship with you. So you have to be self-critical and self-aware about your blind spots, because if you don't do that, nobody might tell you. That is why those people come to coaches, because nobody in their surrounding will give them an honest feedback about what kind of leader they are, because people have stakes in the game. That is why it's important for you to do your work of like maintaining your integrity and authenticity and understanding your flaws and being honest to yourself.
Absolutely. I cannot tell you. I have so many stories that I can tell you of times when I've been in an organization and helped them to turn the organization around, because part of my brand is helping organizations grow and scale, and also turning around underperforming organizations, in some cases that are at risk of being shut down by the government or by some entity because maybe they're not profitable or they're non-compliant, or there's some significant risk out there that if it doesn't quickly get turned around, the company could actually shut down. And I've seen so many stories in my career of companies that we built, or teams or organizations, departments that we built and that we helped to grow and helped to turn around. And then you bring in a leader that doesn't have that background, doesn't have that self-awareness of their strengths and weaknesses, maybe hasn't put the time in to really self-develop, and you can literally watch all of that go crumbling down, all of that great work and the toil and the blood, sweat, and tears, as they say. So that self-awareness is really important, and it's super important in the corporate space as well, just in a little bit of a different way. In the corporate space, you do have to have self-awareness, but you also have to have self-awareness about how you and your strengths and weaknesses align with the broader enterprise. And so you are part of a system. That system existed before you got there, and when you leave, it will exist after you're gone in most cases, unless it gets shut down, right? So you are having to figure out how you and who you are and everything that comes with it, all of your strengths, weaknesses, motivations, fears, desires, all of that, how that fits within a broader system that's already well defined. And I think that's also so important. You know, I'll sort of get into the next issue, which is around your personal brand and staying true to that. If you know what your values are and you've done that work to become self-aware, you're going to get really good at identifying companies that align with your brand, your personal brand.
And I would want to, I'm sorry, I have to, sometimes I feel like I have to simplify things that you are saying for my audience, because my audience are not native speakers in English. They are often immigrants coming from other parts of the world and living in different cultures. So I sometimes feel like I have to explain what you just said, but also kind of like emphasize some of the things. But I think it is important to distinguish that when you are an entrepreneur, and in my audience there are many startup people, startup founders, first-time founders, and as opposed to when you are a corporate leader, I think those are like two different skill sets, because being an entrepreneur, you have a freedom to exactly project your personal brand and make it more about your persona, while in corporate environment, you have to comply and to fit certain environment that is already designed. And if you're not a good fit, and I had many problems in like inserting myself as an entrepreneur in corporations, it's like a hard journey after you've been an entrepreneur to fit back in a corporate environment, because you are a misfit already, because you've developed certain skills as an independent leader, as a personal brand, and you don't have tolerance for some of the corporate rules and the corporate policies and frameworks. So it is important to understand that depending on like where you are, this will be a very different profile of a leader and of a woman leader as well, right?
Absolutely.
So can we address that, right? So what are the differences that like between being a woman leader in entrepreneurship world? It requires building a personal brand. In corporate world also requires a personal brand, but conditionally. So it doesn't irritate other people around you too much.
It's building your personal brand as part of a larger system that already pre-existed.
Yeah. Inserting your personal brand in already existing brand of a company.
Absolutely. So then we get on to, because I think you nailed it, you know, problem solving, I think, is such a critical skill. But when you're an entrepreneur, you have so much more freedom to problem solve in a different way. You may have more resource constraints. Right? You may have more resource constraints as an entrepreneur than you would experience as an executive, because as an executive, typically the company has already established their financial streams, and you have to maybe manage your profit and loss, but there's the amount of resources that you have are in most cases way outnumber what you would experience as an entrepreneur, as a fempreneur, or as a small business owner. So that is, how you solve problems as part of a pre-established culture, pre-established system, in some cases as part of a pre-established matrix, which is what you often encounter in the corporate world, is vastly different from how you do that as an entrepreneur. But problem solving skills in these environments is so critical across the board. It's just how you do it that is different.
What about the personal brand, Lisa? I know you're really great at building your personal brand, and you've kind of graduated from corporate environment, and then you launched as an entrepreneur. That's what happened to myself as well. So what are some of the tips that you can share with our audience today and everybody who will be watching it afterwards? What are the tips of building successful personal brand that will work for both worlds?
Absolutely. So the first thing is that, that just, and they are trying to figure that out for themselves. So the first thing is, I've got a whole program that I put them through to help them assess kind of who they are, what are their values, what really matters to them, and what are they trying to achieve. In my case, I am a highly innovative leader. So organizations that are really, really stagnant, they're not really going to match with my personal brand. They're not going to be fulfilling to me, and I'm probably going to annoy them because in those environments, I like to innovate. So if it's an environment that just wants to maintain, steady, they're sort of more of a steady Betty or steady Eddie type of organization, then my, sort of innovation and wanting to be so much of a change agent it's going to be too much for them. So it's going to be a misalignment. So
it
I
takes
think
to be a successful change agent. Like, what are the survival tips? Because you know it can kill you. It's a very suicidal mission, by the way.
First is finding that cultural alignment. That's so important. So really just understanding kind of who you are and what is aligned with you is so critical. So, you know, it's that branding is so important. In the entrepreneurial space, so, you know, understanding your strengths and weaknesses is so important in the entrepreneurial space, because your ability to go fast is directly dependent on how much time you have, how many people are helping you, and how much money you have to go fast. In my case, I said, okay, what do I love? What to me is the highest value activity? I love doing business development. I love being out there and connecting with people, connecting with other business leaders, figuring out how we can find win-wins, negotiating. You know, these are the things that I love. These are the things that I find true to my heart. And as a person who is very aware of branding, I am not a super artistic person. That is one of my weaknesses. So I know from being an executive for all of these years that if you don't have it, you have to figure out how you can find it, right? So you either learn it, and that can be maybe a little bit less costly, but certainly more time consuming, or you bring on a team to help you do it. In my case, I brought on a team to help me do it. So I brought in people that were experts. And even with Leading with Lisa, we are going through this wonderful rebranding initiative right now. We're in the midst of it. We have a new logo. We're developing a new slogan, which, by the way, our new slogan is your success, our mission. Really simple. And really it's about understanding who you are, understanding what you want, and then having team members join your tribe, as I like to say it, who can help you, who are experts in the areas that you either don't have time to, you know, focus in on. It's just not your strength, or
delegate, right? Delegate and strengthen your team by engaging with right people who are great experts.
Absolutely. So that is so important. And sorry if the lighting has gone out a little bit here, so I'll try and get that back up.
We still see your beauty perfectly. You look very beautiful and very successful, Lisa. Please continue.
Thank you very much. Very kind. So
Speaking of brand,
you know, right? The branding is so important, and really just, you know, either if you are a creative person, figuring that out yourself and getting people on board to help you if it's not one of your strengths, or if you're just wanting to move super quickly to get the business launched and off the ground, having a team there to support you who are really experts in that space is going to be really critical.
Okay, amazing. So speaking about succeeding in male-dominated environments, especially there, for example, a lot of tech communities that I operate in, like man-dominated world, whereas a lot of tech guys, tech business leaders, tech entrepreneurs who are mostly men, software engineers, and in government, majority in America still are men, as in any corporate structure, from what I know. So what are some of the success strategies that you can share with us, some of the tips of how you can establish yourself as a woman leader? And then maybe like let's dive into specific practical situations where you as a woman, you're being interviewed for a job by a man leader. You are approaching a conference and you have to network and you have to start conversations with man leaders who are higher ranking, for example, than you. Or you are presenting to the audience of men leaders, or you are negotiating a deal, like terms of your contract with your partners, and they are men and you are a woman. Or what are other possible scenarios? You are in informal, some kind of party situation, right? That is still a corporate event or business event, but it is ways, I just recently realized ways how men and women can bond and network. Like for women, those ways are limited because like there are certain lines you can't cross, and while men can successfully bond in like informal, using informal situations to build business relationships, which are limited opportunity for women. And I just recently realized there is this limitation. So what would be the practical tips that we can, successful strategies that you, from your experience as a woman and business woman in America who succeeded in your corporate career, can now share with our audience of beautiful, successful women as well.
Sure. So the strategy that you deploy is really going to be highly dependent on what your goals are. So knowing yourself and knowing what your goals are going to be really important. And then understanding the needs, aspirations, and goals of the other party, super critical. So curiosity is really, really important in these instances. And so I'll give you an example. Whether it's a negotiation, whether it's a job interview, if you are, encountering a difficult conversation with a man, it's important to understand what their motivations are and what your motivations are. So your first thing may be that if you're trying to get a job or you're trying to get a point across. So effective communication is really, really important. That can be, the elements of that include tactful corporate communication. So understanding what language to use in that scenario is really, really important. Striving to align with the common language of your industry, of your company culture is really, really important to incorporate. And if you do that, what you say will be received more readily. That's
I
important.
100% want to applaud to this statement, and again underline it for my audience of culturally diverse audience of who are not Americans and trying to succeed in America. Language, guys. Because the words, the same meaning, but you use the wrong words to say it, it will not lay right. Like it will not be accepted well because you will sound as an outsider, not as an insider. So learn the language of the industry, and the best way to do it, and even a tip for entrepreneurs when you are doing a presentation, exactly. So listen to the interviews on YouTube or somewhere, how your clients or your business counterparts are talking about the subject that you are talking, which words they exactly are using, and then write down those words and learn them and rehearse your speech to make sure that you are using the right language. Exactly, it is key for me as twice an immigrant, so I had to start it over my career in 2 countries, and I learned my lesson the hard way, and it's still a struggle with an accent and everything. So people think if you have a difficulty like in a language, then you also have difficulty thinking. So you're not smart enough probably. So yes, 100% using the right language is key. Thank you.
I would say that gets you in the door. Then learning how to navigate times of stress. So an interview, a networking event where you have to initiate a conversation, so critical. So navigating through times of conflict and having those skills, and I know that we've talked about them a little bit already during today, but that is so critical. So it's learning the common language of leadership for that industry is so important, but then being able to navigate communications during times of stress or during times of conflict is critically important, because some women shut down and we don't know, we almost get like a writer's
block, or they get emotional, or they take it personally, right? So or they overreact.
Absolutely. So it is a skill set that has to be built over time, and there are lots of resources out there. It's something we absolutely work with all of our clients on. But communicating during times of stress is really, really important, because it's quite often that when a person is emotional and they're approaching a critical conversation with a lot of emotion and energy kind of charged behind it, that the person that's hearing the message does not receive the message, which can further escalate the situation. So being able to communicate during times of stress and in a way that allows your message to be received by the other party is so critical.
And not just in times of stress, by the way. I would say in general, we are teaching that emotional intelligence is a great thing, and like everybody should use emotions. Sorry, this is Miami noise outside. I don't know if you guys hear this. It's like crazy Ferrari Lamborghini people who are not women, probably. So bringing emotions at work, it can be helpful, but also can be destructive. or distracting, because if we as a women, we often have like higher pitch voice, sometimes like our language is more emotional. I'm now doing it for presentation purposes, but in a business negotiation I would probably not do it. It's like a different format now, more entertaining for Instagram Live. But in general, I think the more these emotional vibrations are women are bringing to these meetings or these communications, that this basically downgrades their status in terms of like how they're being perceived. If they're being perceived as a too emotional or flirty, or not very serious, not very high status. I even heard this phrase, and think about it for a moment, that speaking of a business picture that the women or men use on a business profile, they say every like centimeter, every inch of smile decreases your monetary value of your brand for like whatever, a few $100, $1,000. So basically, the more, if you have like a big smile, you come across as a lower status individual, as opposed to if you have like a very stoned face. Like in our picture for this broadcast, if you've seen this flyer, we both are not smiling. So this is like a very high value women image. But generally, emotions can actually play against you in this circumstance.
And it can during business negotiations. It can during interviews. It can during times of feedback, times of conflict, times of stress. It can also be used as a tool. So being able to harness that energy in a way that will be to your benefit is really the skill set that you want to hone. That I would advocate that all women really study and become studious about, so that you can cultivate that, so that you can leverage that passion that you have, which makes us so powerful, and really leverage it to your advantage in these business scenarios. And that's negotiations, providing feedback. I would say these are some of the most critical skills, and the way in which you employ them is different depending on whether you're in government or a nonprofit or, small business, fempreneur, startup, versus the way that you would have to kind of wield it and leverage that skill set in the corporate environment.
Amazing. I love this conversation. And now let's look at the scenario when there is a woman boss is leading, managing men employees. What are some of the tactics that you would recommend women using in order to come across as a more powerful leader, so they have more authority for men employees?
So
men and women employees, but we're talking now about some kind of a gender differences, but men employees.
So I still go back to communication skills. One of the most important communication skills as it relates to tactful communications is curiosity, and putting yourself in a space of true, authentic curiosity. Because no matter what scenario you're in, if you encounter pushback in any way, whether you're giving it or whether you're receiving it, it's important to, people call it the Socratic method. Ask questions to genuinely understand. Because what you will do is you'll be able to turn a stressful situation into a learning moment, a real-time learning moment for yourself that will strengthen who you are and your brand as a result of that. So that is really first and foremost. The second is sometimes miscommunications happen when you're working across genders, especially when there are power imbalances. So I would say my second piece of advice really is to understand that misunderstandings sometimes happen. Give yourself some grace and commit yourself to trying to make it right, whatever it is. The third I would say is understand power imbalances. So if you're talking to a person of the other gender and they are your boss, how you approach them is going to be different than if they're a peer of yours. It's going to be different than if they are more junior than you, if they are a direct report of yours, whether that's a dotted line direct report or a straight line direct report. All of these things matter. Sometimes you just have to lead and navigate through influence. In other cases, you have power on your side. In other cases, you do not have power on your side. So understanding power imbalances is really, really important in your conversations, in particular with the other gender. And then I would say negotiating is really, really key. I know that we talked about that a little bit. I think there has to be a little bit of cultural awareness as well when you are talking with individuals of other genders, because they may come from a background that's really comfortable negotiating and debating, and or they may come from a culture that is not comfortable with that at all, that is more hierarchical in nature, that expects you as a direct report, for example, to be open to feedback and curious, and not argumentative or debating in any way, just very accepting and tolerant. And you find that in a lot of people with military hierarchical backgrounds, which you find, it's quite common in this area of Washington, D.C., where we have just a ton of government personnel. Anybody that has, a military background, they're probably going to really have an appreciation for respect for authority, and can view, debating an issue as very disrespectful. So there can be cultural norms that you have to be aware of that extend to other genders and conversations with those other genders. And then last but not least, I would say it's really important to be open to feedback and to understand the power of feedback, both giving and receiving. One thing that I see in my practice all the time, and I see it often in organizations that are led by the other gender, by a male gender. If they are an individual that has not ever made their way through corporate America, maybe they started off as a small business owner, entrepreneur, they started it, it's always been theirs, unless they have surrounded themselves with people who are comfortable giving them feedback, they may not be comfortable receiving feedback. And this extends beyond their professional life. This is in their dating life, their personal relationships, their family relationships.
Basically, if you are not trained,
they're not accustomed to
be dealing with negative feedback, that is criticism. So yeah, many people get defensive. I think it takes a skill to be calm and cool with taking feedback when it is not the most pleasant one. So this is definitely a skill. It will be a demonstration of your leadership, just like your language. If you're speaking very politely and very intelligently, that speaks about your status and professionalism. Also, how you manage and handle the challenging conversations, receiving feedback. Are you able to hold yourself in those situations? Yeah, that would be basically an indicator of how high level of leader you are.
Absolutely. Yeah. So practice giving feedback, and also know that you do not want to become a small business owner, an entrepreneur, a fempreneur that does not have people around you that are comfortable giving you feedback, because that feedback is gold. It will protect you from risks that people see coming your way that happen to be a part of your blind spot.
And negotiations, what could be other useful tips, pieces of advice for the situations of negotiating with men, where this is a kind of a confrontational situation where your weaknesses as a woman can be taken against you? For example, in investment context, right? So they would investors would give you lower valuation than for the same company that is founded by a man founder, right? Male founder. Or you will get a lower salary if you are negotiating your job offer, etc. So what are some of the negotiation techniques that maybe you used in your experience?
Yes. So first and foremost, preparation is key. So one of my personal philosophies is if you give it your all and you prepared as much as you could and it was unsuccessful, at least you can look back and you can say, I gave it my all. But what you don't want is to fail to prepare, go through it and be unsuccessful, and to look back with regret and say, you know what? I could have done better. I really could have studied more. I really could have tried to understand their motivations. I could have really done the research on their goals. So it's really important to come prepared and do your research on the company or the individual that you're negotiating with, whether it's another business, it could be a job interview. It could be, You know, any type of negotiation, do your research. That's really, really important, especially as women, because that's one of the ways that you offset the power imbalance. It's you establish yourself as an authority on whatever it is by doing your research. It allows you absolutely. Yeah. Second is ask good questions. So from your research, I would encourage every woman to say, what are their motivations based on what I know about their company, based on what I know about where they are. Read their financial statements, ask good questions, because what you want to find out is what are their needs. If you can figure out what their needs are and or where their weak spots are, then you can speak to those and position yourself to be able to meet a distinct need. Again, it's a clear way to equate, to normalize the power imbalances that may exist in the relationship. And that's really what you're doing during a negotiation. You are inquiring and you are seeking to understand and identify what their true need is, to assess whether you can meet that need, whether you can fill that need. And that's how you establish your authority and your negotiating power in that negotiation. The fourth thing is, so you're asking good questions. Then it's a matter of assessing, is there truly a need that you, like, is this aligned with what you want? And is it something that you feel like you truly can meet? Because that authenticity is really, really important. So as I mentioned a little earlier, the importance of self-awareness is really, really critical. Knowing what you're going in to that negotiation, trying to get out of it. So if you're trying to close the deal, or if it might be a networking event and you're just trying to establish a contact, maybe you're trying to establish a business, partnership. When you go into that discussion, be very clear-minded about what you're hoping to get out of it, and don't be afraid to share, because a point will emerge in that conversation that will allow you to say what you're looking for, and it will allow that other person to also assess, are they the right partner, or do they know somebody that can help you get? So it's not always just about what they want. It's understanding what that opposing side wants, and then being really clear-minded about what you're looking to get. And that's where you begin to establish a true win-win. And that's the fourth element that I would recommend. It's, where does the win-win emerge, where you both benefit from this business partnership, or from this, entering into a contract, or from them, hiring you into the role, or you accepting this promotion. Are you going to get out of it what you're looking for? And are they going to get out of it what they're looking for? And it's really about finding that win-win.
And I would also add to there, to just following common sense, factors that contribute to success of any negotiation or any deal or any contact building, relationship building activity, such as honesty, transparency. We know that people invest money or buy things from people that they know, like, and trust. So just follow like the best practices, the best guidelines of the sales methodology, or basically approach it as a regular human-to-human communications. It's not about gender differences, obviously, but I would say that sometimes women even have advantages in a situation. We often look at this as a headwinds, right? So we have a specific challenges that we need to overcome, right? But a smart strategy would be to actually use those misconceptions and those weaknesses, perceived weaknesses and stereotypes in your favor, and kind of even speculating or manipulating on those things. So if you are being underestimated, the most dangerous enemy is an underestimated enemy, like the partner whose impact or value you underestimate, and how big of a consequence it can take, right? It can make. So definitely playing with those things. And I think women definitely have advantage in any negotiation, because they are being intuitive. They are better at reading nonverbal clues, nonverbal language. They are better at being flexible and kind of reading in between the lines, and being having those different even examining different things that can influence the dynamic of communication. So even the fact that you look nice and you're pleasant to look at, to deal with and to talk to can be already, because humans at the end of the day, yes, and we think of ourselves as irrational beings, but in fact, in a matter of fact, we're not. Daniel Kahneman received the Nobel Prize for proving humans are irrational beings. So if I understand being an attractive woman sometimes can play a bad joke with you, as like a man can get defensive and kind of what would be trying to overcome their whatever personal attraction, and that can affect your business negotiation. So you want to maybe dress down in terms of not kind of explicitly demonstrating your gender differences, but also keeping in mind that being a woman can be a competitive advantage in negotiations, and understanding what are your strengths and how you can use them in a smart way in order to win your deal or your negotiation or your investment round. So basically using those factors that are initially against you, using them in your favors as a smart Jedi. So yeah, this would be my
absolutely point. You know, there's a lot of research out there about how using, you know, incorporating your personality and even humor can actually really help you in negotiations and in very stressful situations. It can actually draw your audience closer to you in those moments. And so these little techniques and skills are really, really important. Obviously, personal appearance and grooming, right? The opposing party is always going to be assessing, can I trust this person? Are they competent? Are they capable? Can I trust them with my money? Can I trust them with my reputation? You know, all of the things that we talked about around learning, integrity, strength, and being courageous and being a bold leader, and just having awareness of yourself and others in these moments is so critical.
Yes, being professional. And women tend to be over-prepared often because women are so self-critical and they learn more, and then they always feel they're not good enough, so they would put double effort into preparing and over-preparing. So, but those are really great tips, Lisa. I'm so grateful that you are sharing this with us. It is very valuable, guys. My brain is already exploding because I'm trying to lead this conversation and also learn at the same time, because I didn't know what Lisa would be sharing with us today, but it seems like all gold. And I have last couple of questions, and we should be wrapping up already because I know it's been very intense and exhausting probably for you. But my almost last question would be about women immigrants. Women immigrants start their career journey from a much harder starting point, and they are not culturally integrated initially in society, so they have to, whenever though they have more challenges and they have more disadvantages in terms of their position where they're starting. They can be bright, they can be smart, they can be very educated, but still the perceptions or stereotypes would be against them. They have to break through a ton of different challenges. And what could be good tips for women who are not native speakers, not American, and they want to build career in America, they want to build personal brand in America, they want to build a global brand, so they want to become successful in America and globally. So what can you share from your experience, from experience of women in your circle? What could be a winning strategy for these women to level up their game?
Okay, so I would say there are some unique challenges that, as you mentioned, female immigrant leaders may face in America. Communication is really, really important. There can be language barriers that can represent an impediment in this country. So some of the things that you would want to think about is, where are you located? Are you planning to relocate to the United States to start your business here, or do you need a business partner who is located here to help you with your brand development and, you know, really projecting your brand to the, you know, to this country?
Find a local partner. So that would be a good tip. Yes, I think this is great.
And it's a personal choice, but, you know, it's also possible to relocate and to move to America and to start your business here. And we have lots of programs that allow business owners from other countries to do that. So it's a personal choice, but it's an important choice that any female business owner is going to have to make if they want to, if they want to do business in the United States. And then where they look, if they choose to relocate to the United States, where they choose to relocate also really matters, because, Washington, D.C. are known for certain things. New York is known for certain things versus Miami. That's known for totally different things, or Los Angeles, or the center of the country, Texas, Chicago. So, if you're in financial services, you may want to relocate to New York. If you are in the IT sector and, or fintech, or, sort of a tech startup, you may want to be in California near Silicon Valley, or some places in Texas that are, sort of becoming kind of a mini Silicon Valley. If you are in real estate, or if you're in healthcare, or if you're, wanting to, target a more aging population, you can find them in Texas, you can find them in Florida, you can find them in other parts of the country. Or if you really want to get into government contracting, or if you want to do federal government contracting, Washington, D.C. is kind of the epicenter of that. So where you choose to relocate really matters, and having a partner here who can help you figure that out, I think, is really, really important. It will help you with your messaging. It'll also help you ensure that where you choose to locate has a community of people that understand that target niche, that can help you integrate. And I would say that's really, really important. So finding your tribe is really, really important. And it's a matter of who, it's also a matter of where.
Plugging into the right networks in the right time, in the right place with the right people.
Yes, okay. Absolutely. Okay. So it's how are you going to do it? How are you going to launch your business here? And then where and who, right? Who is going to be your support network? It's quite possible that somebody coming from the other country may not have a network here. They may not know anybody. So, finding a firm, business coaching firm, can help you break down doors. Getting connected to different communities of women or female business owners can help you accelerate the process of learning and getting integrated into the community. So it's really, really important that you're thoughtful about kind of who you partner with, where they are, where you want to start up your business. All of these are just really fundamental questions to ask. We talked a little bit about negotiating. Negotiations in America can be vastly different than how you negotiate in other parts of the country, other parts of the world. There are actually cultures that are really, really good at negotiating. Like, they are just, they're weird.
People, for example, unless you drink tea with them for 30 minutes, there will be no any kind of opening even for any negotiation, right? You have to talk about your family for hours. I think in Asia, it's a similar way, yeah. But then you can get a really good deal.
And there's
if you do
some
that.
cultures that involve alcohol in their negotiations, right? That's a cultural part of what they do.
Oh yeah.
That's not as common here in the United States, but at certain levels it is, and in certain industries it is. So, that's an important factor. There are certain cultures that are really good at sales and sales techniques, and the salesy side of a negotiation, the influencing side. A lot of that represents an advantage, a strategic advantage, when you come to America, where we're not really reared as much in negotiations. We're, we don't haggle as much. For example, when we go to buy a car, we're not as adept at,
Yeah, so basically what Lisa
process.
is saying, guys, is that America is the simplest country in terms of everything is as it is written. It is, you just follow the rules, follow the instructions, and there are no some kind of like games that in other countries, there are certain games that you have to figure out to navigate, to understand the mentality, mindset, and in America, it's simple. You open the website, the way how it is written, it works exactly the same way. So it's not a matter of nothing personal. It's very more formal, more following the rules, and that is why it is more simple, and it is the easiest country to open your business, to start doing things, because everything is very rational and it is as it was promised. So it works, and it was very surprising for me, for somebody who I lived in Central Asia, I lived in Russia, I studied there, and Europe, and then coming to America, I was like, wow, that was a relief. Like you don't have to find somebody, an insider in every system, to kind of understand the politics and to find the right access points and to figure out your game. Yes, America was very refreshing and definitely much easier to figure out, to understand. And also, I would add to your recommendations that taking advantage of those cultural communities that exist in America. America is a country of immigrants. Everybody came here on different boats at some point. So there are all these clusters of cultural communities. In every city, in every big city, there are people from your country. If you're coming from some country, there are people from your country already in America who speak your language, who understand your struggles, who've been there, they already made it through your past, and they can actually help you. They can show you some shortcuts, some life hacks. They can be your support system. They can heal your nostalgia, your homesickness, whatever. So, and then he can give you like cultural flavors of your home country. If you like the downside of it is like if you hang out with your community for too long, and this is what I also learned in my personal experience, then it kind of limits your ability to access actual America, because then you only hang out with your culture and you do not quite play on this global stage, which is also important. And then some people don't even improve their English because they get stuck in those cultural communities, and they speak their own language, their cultural language, the country they come from. So that's how they never enter America, in fact, as a business environment.
Yeah, I think you've raised a great point, which is you know, a reality in America is that there are always what we call glass ceilings here. And it's called a glass ceiling because you in your role don't always know that it exists. You don't realize why you're not accelerating, or why you're not advancing to the next level, or why you can't get, you know, that job that you're looking for, why it's so hard. And it's often referred to here as a glass ceiling. And I think immigrants, and in particular immigrant women, there's another aspect of the glass ceiling that can emerge from a language barrier. So if there is a job that you're interviewing for and it is based on effective communications with, you know, or sales, marketing, or business development, PR, marketing, not having
software engineering is easy because you don't need language, you just code. But yes, for communication professions, yes.
And it can be quite limiting in terms of the opportunities that are made available to you if you don't learn the English language at a level, at least a conversational level, to be able to speak in business. So that's something that's really, really important. You know, as somebody who was raised, I'm Italian and I'm also Puerto Rican. My parents didn't want us learning the original language of the, you know, motherland, because they wanted us to grow up. They wanted my children, my siblings, all of us children, to grow up as Americans and not as from, you know, a person from that other country. And now as an adult, I have chosen to learn those other languages because I appreciate the ability to communicate with people and to understand them. When you learn another language, you begin to understand the people who speak that language as well, just from how that language is spoken, how the words are put together, you know, whether they're using masculine or feminine nouns or pronouns. You know, they tell you a lot about how that culture operates. And when you come to a new country, if you don't really immerse yourself in the culture and try to speak the language and try to understand it, you really miss out on some of those key critical things that will allow you to be able to navigate the world of business in that country.
And I would just add to that, guys, if you're entrepreneurs, you will figure it out. And just remember 2 words: problem solving. If you just learn problem solving skills, if you don't know how, like, you can take my training. I actually have a PhD in problem solving. I literally studied decision making processes in political voting, by the way, but also problem solving, because the decision making is a part of problem solving. So it is basically an algorithm. If you figure out how to work with information, how to formulate the options you have, and then how to choose among the best option based on what you have to offer, like the environment you're at, and then basically this is your path to success. So just learn problem solving skills and then start from there. And finally, here we come to our last question. And Lisa, I'm so grateful that you're here and you're speaking wisdom. And this has been incredible and absolutely fascinating for me. We should do it again, for sure. I want to conclude with this question that is, I think, important for many women. And also cultural side of it is that, for example, in the environments I was starting my career, those were environments where women were competing with each other. Women leaders would not be supportive to each other. There would be no so-called tribe or sisterhood. And it's like you would, in fact, as a woman, you would prefer to deal with men, because then you kind of it's easier for you to win this way, because you at least don't have to expect to be stabbed in the back, because men are very honest and like very straightforward, right? But women can be as competitors, can be like really brutal. And it was really such a pleasing thing for me to realize that in America there's a very different culture in terms of women supporting women, and women not being like competitive and cruel to each other, but women actually being partners, being able to really authentically and sincerely help and support and uplift other women. And that was something that I really loved about American culture. And I want to share with you, like to ask you to speak a little bit about this topic, about women supporting other women, about the sisterhoods, what we need to do in order to encourage this, maybe like how can we influence women mindset in terms of that this is a good approach to support each other, and how to do it best. What are the support systems that exist in America or globally that are supportive for women? So how can we empower more women, and as women empower each other?
It's a great question. So I will say that as a person who has spent my most of my career in corporate America working for different companies, that, you know, the backstabbing that you mentioned, unfortunately, is absolutely the case. And so
right, corporate, because actually I studied in academia, so but still even there it was the case.
Absolutely. And so within your company, if your company doesn't allow for groups of people to sort of commiserate together, to talk openly about what's going on and to effectuate change and to try and sort of impact the culture in a positive way, then really what you got to think about is how can you do that outside of your work to really gain the skills to be able to navigate those interpersonal scenarios in your corporate life. And if you're an entrepreneur, then I would suggest that you find those no matter what, because they're going to have a wealth of knowledge that as a resource constrained small business owner, startup, you know, fempreneur, that you're just not going to have at your fingertips in the same way unless you're super blessed and really, really connected. But most people, certainly most people coming from outside the country or relocating to an area to establish, they're not going to have those connections right away. They're not going to have that community. And so finding the right tribe is so important. It's building a team around you that can support you, that can help you see your weaknesses, your blind spots, that can help you shore up those weaknesses and allow you to move the business forward, or just to move forward in your personal life in achieving the dreams that you have for yourself. So it's so incredibly important to find your tribe. It's something that I advocate very, very strongly. And if you're a female, what you're going to need to be able, as we talked about a little bit earlier, to take that mask off, to be able to share what you're really experiencing and what your fears are, where you feel like your weaknesses are, and with a level of transparency that somebody else who has been there or who can help you can raise their hand to you and say, I can help.
Being able to ask for help, and opening up to people, and sometimes exposing your vulnerability in order to receive this help. because and communicating about this, right? And also I would add here, what you said is so true, and we can't emphasize enough the value of having this support system, the tribe, your group of people, your community, but also you as a woman projecting your values, that you are supportive of other women and being very explicit about it, because you are if you are holding back and if you are being this manipulative bitch, you are inviting other women to kind of not be supportive to you, but leading by your example and declaring and manifesting that you are a woman who supports other women and offering this support to other women. Even you don't have to offer much in this specific professional domain, you can offer something in other domain, but still kind of providing value to other women and bringing something to the table, so people can see that you are giving, not just looking to take something. And I think that this authenticity and leading with your own example as a woman who is capable of collaborating, partnering, who has this integrity, has value, and who is liking and have positive attitude to other women other than stabbing them in the back and competing with them. So being that woman, I think that is was important, that each one of us have to make this choice, that you are a woman who supports other women, and you build a circle of your friends, your sisters, who you support and who support you.
I couldn't agree with you more, and that's why I have really appreciated, Tatiana, all that you have brought to the table, and just the tremendous work that you've put in, all of the research, the books that you've written, the way in which you seek to give back to other women. I could not agree more that, we have a decision to make in our community as to what type of women we are going to stand for and what our personal values are going to be. And, putting that out into the world, when you learn, you teach. That's my philosophy. When you learn, you teach. And doing that in a way that gives back to other women is really also fundamental to my values, and also to the company that I've started with Leading with Lisa.
Amazing. And today what we did was an act of giving and uplifting and supporting other women, speaking about women leadership, tackling the pain points, sharing some tips, sharing advice, sharing personal experience, and trying to talk about different important parts of this topic. And this is a very long conversation, definitely, and there should be more conversations like this, but I want to thank you so much for being such an enlightening expert today, and being here and sharing your experience, sharing your wisdom. I hope, and I'm sure, at least for me and definitely for our audience, it was very useful and very insightful. And I want to thank you, Lisa, for being here and bringing the light to today's live broadcast.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been such a joy. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you, Tatiana, to be able to work with you in this way, and also to be able to speak to your audience. And I just want to thank you all for having me.
Amazing. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, our audience, for being with us. And we will save this and you can watch it later, but I will definitely rewatch it myself. Thank you, Lisa. Have a great weekend.
Thank you so much.
And hopefully see you sometime soon.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you.